Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, we are talking about the equipment rental industry and challenges that organizations in this space experience in deploying ERP solutions that meet their unique requirements. My guests from Staedean's product management team tell us more about how their company views challenges in equipment rental, why it's operationally unique, and why Staedean views it as a strategically important sector. They explain how Microsoft has invested in more rental capabilities for its core Dynamics 365 ERP solutions and what that says about the rental industry's direction. Microsoft implementation partners have a unique opportunity in this space, my guests believe. We discuss the uptake of modern ERP in equipment rental so far and how Staedean are looking to the future, including with practical AI use cases and other advanced scenarios. All right. Well, I am glad to have two new guests here for today's podcast. I'd like you both to maybe just introduce yourself to our listeners as we begin. So, Michiel, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, great. Thanks for inviting us, having us over here. Let me start to introduce myself a little bit and the company we work for. So we work for Staedean. Staedean is a global ISV bringing specialized industry business applications built on top of the Microsoft Dynamics ecosystem. And my role within the company is I'm the CPO, Chief Product Officer. And together with my team, I'm overseeing the product and strategy and roadmap that we are bringing to market specifically for our rental solution. My role goes a little bit longer back in the rental space, I must say. I think I have over 20 years experience in rental. I started 20 years ago in the IT right after my study, and I started to do an ERP implementation for a rental organization. And I think that is where my rental journey started. So I'm happy to talk about that today. Maybe for the people that don't know rental that well, I think we're getting more and more familiar with rental in our private lives, right? Whether when you need to do some decoration at home, you rent a drill, you need something to use for a weekend, or when you have bought that couch at IKEA and you need to bring that to your house, you don't have a truck that fits it in and you need to rent something. So I think rental is a very common thing in our private lives. And well, you may not always see the complexities in there, but in the back end, there are a lot of complexities and challenges that rental companies need to organize around in order to make that flawless rental experience for the client. So again, maybe a little long introduction for myself, but as you can see, talking about rental makes me excited, and I'm happy to be here today.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into so many of those points. But yeah, before we do, Anastasia, welcome to you as well. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a product manager, equipment rental solution, and about also 2 decades experience in IT. Most of this experience in rental space. In fact, I started my working journey in the Netherlands with the leading European rental company, specifically in heavy equipment sector. You can imagine heavy equipment, everything is heavy, big, right? Like air working platforms. You saw it, for example, cutting the trees for repairs outside. And this is also our typical customer because it's how we fit in. The next segment we normally work with is construction equipment. Also, probably saw it, roadworks, and if you haven't been on construction site yet. And crane rental comes a lot in the picture. What is also on the rise is energy rental right now, right? Because a lot of companies want to go green, want to use electric equipment instead of diesel, for example. And this will also come to us, and that is who we work with.
Yeah, and just from what you both discussed so far, I mean, this industry really covers so many potential scenarios and touches other industries. I think everything from, Michiel, as you said, from sort of some consumer facing, scenarios, perhaps all the way to such a range of industrial scenarios and capabilities and things that maybe people in their day-to-day lives don't see or even know about, but that have such a huge impact on these different industries. So yeah, I'm really excited to get more into it. And, within the Microsoft Dynamics ecosystem, equipment rental has always been an important capability, like I said, because it touches probably so many other industries and has such an impact kind of on value chains and on other industries. Why is it becoming a strategically important area right now, Michiel?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think there are a couple of things that I see in there. So let me maybe do one step back. If I look at the market and again, bringing that back to our day-to-day lives, I think renting and the economy of sharing is becoming more and more prominent in our daily lives. And I compare that always with my son. He's 9 years old. And when I'm on a holiday or I'm in the city, it's always like, hey, can we take an electric scooter? And can we take another bicycle to go somewhere? And we just rent it. And for him, it's so common. But if I compare that back to when I was younger, well, you either had a bicycle or you didn't. And that was the way it was. So the sharing economy, and you can see that also in renting a car and leasing a car, it's becoming a more prominent thing in our lives. And I think that is a trend that we see. And that's also a trend that you see with equipment rental companies, equipment companies. So instead of owning equipment, why don't you rent equipment if you only need it a couple of times a year? Or in some cases, it's even cheaper to rent or lease your equipment instead of buying it. So those things, those big trends that you see, I think it's a trend that also is happening in the Dynamics ecosystem of Microsoft that you see, because manufacturers and equipment company, asset-centric organizations, they move away from selling equipment that they buy or that they produce into more rental or leasing models. And I think that is catching the trend that we now see and what is also happening in the ERP space. So maybe, Anastasia, maybe you can talk a little bit more about these market trends, give a few examples on what we see in and around our organization and our clients.
Yeah, so what we've already mentioned, of course, is shift from ownership to temporary ownership, which is not only visible in private life, but also in business sphere, because it gives companies flexibility, it lowers the risks, maybe there are not enough knowledge in the company how to repair specific equipment, so it's easier to rent, right? And this trend is well confirmed by market growth, which we can already see in US only is around $83 billion this year for industrial equipment. And my favorite rental term is rental penetration is growing as well. It's basically how much equipment is being rented versus it's being sold. In US, for example, it's currently 60%, and every single year is growing further, which means it's steady growing market to look into. And unfortunately, it was also mentioned about bicycles not available for rent 20, 30 years ago. It's the same with industrial equipment. It's around the period when the rental wave started. And at that time, it was easier to have communication with customers. The offerings were rare. And what happens right now, customers became very experienced. They know how to compare the pricing. It all affects rental margins and make rental companies to make the pricing way more sophisticated, follow seasonal trends, include usage-based examples and such. And of course, even though the market again shows steady growth year over year, there are challenging market conditions and uncertainty outside, which also impacts potential customers and rental customers fighting for those margins. And on top of it, what we already mentioned, movement to electrical equipment, sustainability demands, safety requirements, it all changes the way rental companies operate. It makes it more complex. If you need to comply to so many different rules, it's more difficult to move, right, and grow and develop. So it's a second piece, right, increasing complexity. And the third, the last but not the least, is we see how much need rental companies have in digitalizing their operations. Of course, most of them moved from manual to digital space, even though not all of them and not all processes yet. But even if they do it, they first sometimes choose for disconnected systems, and they still don't get this real-time visibility into the fleet and personnel, which really led them to basically earn money, or in rental terms, increase their utilization by making sure equipment is all rented and bringing money instead of being idle. And so only the last step, which they also moving towards to, is a fully integrated ERP, like Dynamics and additions we provide on top of it, which not only helps them to overcome all these challenges, but also form the solid basis for innovations like AI.
So a lot of changes in the marketplace and a lot of demands on these companies. Michiel, let me ask you about, from our listeners' point of view, who tend to follow Microsoft and are invested in Microsoft technology in some way. How is Microsoft investing more in rental capabilities? What does that tell you about where the market is headed?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think what you see and what we can say about Microsoft, of course, is that Microsoft is only moving into a certain direction when they see real and growing demand. So I think we've all heard about the announcement that they did at the end of last year, where they basically said they will be adding rental capabilities in their core ERP product, which is basically a testimonial that they see that trend and that they see the value and growing demand in there. So I think it's a strong validation of where the market is heading. And I think it's good news for the rental market. I think it's good news for the partners and Microsoft itself, because I think a lot of rental companies will very much welcome the functionality that Microsoft is going to bring. And it will open doors for Microsoft to work with new clients. And it also means that partners can work more with these rental companies themselves. However, I think there's also a very important nuance that I would like to make here for a moment, is that standard ERP is great, right? It covers a lot of generic functionality. It brings all the basic needs that are required for organizations to operate. But if you look at rental and the equipment rental space, well, there are a lot of complexities and challenges that needs to be added in there. And we need to make sure that together within the Microsoft ecosystem, we solve for that together. And that is more than only Microsoft bringing the functionality. I think that's also a responsibility for us as an ISV, but also to the partner ecosystem to work together and make sure that we deliver the right value to our rental customers.
Yeah, and from my perspective, when we do see Microsoft investing in industry-specific capabilities, I also see that as perhaps a sign that there is a lot more room for more sophisticated capabilities that an organization like Staedean can present, and it's perhaps part of the larger pattern we've seen of product development from Microsoft and within the channel.
Well, we definitely see that as well. And I think we also have quite a footprint in manufacturing heavy asset-centric organizations. And there also we see that every industry brings their own requirements and specific needs that need to be answered on top of the Microsoft ERP solution itself. And I think that is why the Microsoft ecosystem and the partner ecosystem exists, right? We can build on top of, and we can bring that industry specialism towards the market together. Although I think that rental is something that we should not underestimate in terms of complexity as well. And I can give a little bit of examples about why is that? Why do we see that? But what I see happening is that a lot of people think maybe too simple about rental. They think, hey, something goes out and something comes back. So it's almost similar to sales. It's selling something, but the only extra thing is that it comes back. And I think on paper that may sound truthfully and right, but I think in reality, it's a little bit more complicated than that, right? Because if you talk about rental and some of the things that Anastasia was just talking about, the timing of delivering something matters. The availability of whatever you are renting out matters, right? What is the quality? What is the condition? What if you deliver it? Do you need to deliver it? Is it being picked up yourself? And what in case there is a damage? And then we don't even talk yet about the complexities of different type of equipment as well, because the deeper you go in specific industries, the more complexities comes around the corner. So it's not just a one-time transaction, it's an ongoing operational process. And I think that is what rental makes things fundamentally different, but also from my point of view and my experience, and they're also very interesting for ISVs like us, but also for partners to jump on that boat and do that together. So maybe Anastasia, I'm not sure how you see that from your perspective, your experience. You come from a background in working for rental companies even. So what are some industry examples that you could bring here as well to build on what I just talked about?
Let me just give you an example of let's say a bigger piece of equipment. You brought a car, which we of course used, and we can use it, right? We have driving licenses, most of us. But imagine that a company needs to rent a crane, like an actual construction equipment crane you may have seen when you drive past, or they're big, right? So if there is new building being built, you see those. If you need to deliver those even to the right location, they don't fit in one truck, right? You need to plan this whole operation, put it in several ones, and deliver. Then it's not illegal to assemble. You need qualified personnel, project plan to put it back together. And now you need to run it. And it's not, again, a driving license, an actual certified operator, went through several courses, who needs to operate this right. And it's also, of course, should be in ERP system, who has the right certifications and such. And then they all need to comply to safety. Because I know for a fact that the crane operator, he does like 5 to 7 checks, walking around the location, starting an equipment, even before start working with it. And it's all has to be in the system as well. So he or she doesn't forget and move forward with it, right? Now maintenance coming. And you can imagine that this piece of equipment consists of multiple parts and they may have different schedules. So agent is older and something else is less old. So you would need to follow all those agendas to make sure it operates safely and efficiently. You need to report, you need to bill, right? It is not Again, it's not just a car as a period of time. You have it for a week, for example. No, on top of it, you have certain hours operator work. You have certain capacity, the engine run. And all of it brings it to additional complexity. Rental company to comply to make the customer happy and to keep the industry standards. And it all goes well, right? The equipment brought, activated, worked on, built, brought back. And unfortunately, if I remember my introduction month at the rental company, and I talked to an insurance person who just said, you remember there is an expression, don't be gentle, it's rental. Unfortunately, it's the case. And then you need to efficiently look for damages and bill those in time. So this kind of things, they all come into play when you talk about really comprehensive equipment we work with, all customers work with.
Yeah, thank you for kind of running through those different capabilities. I think what I take from that is, the requirements can become very complex very quickly and very sophisticated, maybe is a better word than complex. But yeah, Michiel, let me bring you back in. When we look back at sort of standard ERP systems versus what the rental business is asking for today, how well do standard ERPs support the rental business?
Well, the way I look at it, I think standard ERP is great. Let me start with that, right? I think standard ERP has an excellent foundation for finance, HR, inventory, sales, purchase, and now we also are going to add rental in that. I think that is great. And of course, you heard about Anastasia. She talks about a lot of challenges and industry needs that need to be answered for, and they are fair and they need to be solved for. But I think as a foundation, I think having rental as part of the standard capabilities, I think it's great to have that. And maybe one analogy that I would like to bring based on my experience within rental. And during my introduction, I talked about having 20 years experience in rental. And I started my career as a consultant. So I think it was Microsoft Dynamics AX 2.5. So that's like, for the people that are listening in, it's, an old version of Dynamics, I would say. And I started to work for a rental company. And after the implementation, it was an area working platform rental company. And after the implementation, we thought, okay, now we know how rental works. Let's go to the next company. And we started to implement another area working platform company. So for people that are listening, those are those lists that go up and down and the platforms. And we started to do the same implementation. We thought, hey, how difficult can it be? And it was completely different. So even the same rental company or a similar rental company in the same industry was completely different. And I think that's making it very interesting. But again, that is where standard EP brings the right foundation. But every partner needs to build on top of that with the right additional IP, as well as the expertise itself. Because also what I think I would like to add there is that ERP is changing. And I'm not sure if people have seen the interview with Satya Nadella 2 days ago, and he brought up the frontier firm, of course, and the way that Microsoft is seeing the development of AI, talking about co-pilots, agents, where the frontier firms are putting AI at the heart of their foundation as an organization to make a difference. And I think ERP is the backbone for that. So we need to make sure together with Microsoft and our partner ecosystem that fundament is right for the rental organizations, because also for rental companies, AI is there and they need AI in order to solve for the things in their industry itself. So maybe Anastasia, I'm not sure if you could talk a little bit more about how AI is being used in practice for rental companies based on your experience.
Yeah, sure. Let me start with the fact that every single customer we have right now wants to talk to us about AI capabilities to see how can this be applied. But the interest is tremendous. We also collaborate with European Rental Association right now on research around across rental companies to see how they stand against it. In our current version, we run the first round already. We see that a lot of companies are still a little bit further behind, let's say, because again, not solid, fully integrated ERP is the right basis to it. So not everyone yet has this basis. And then they still need to understand what it can bring to them. So in our discussion, we focus on the key challenges we can solve with AI. And one of those I already brought up is utilization. It's very important that equipment is on rent as much as possible and it brings money. If you would be owning an apartment, additional apartment, you of course would like it always to be rented, right? In this case, what we can do with AI, we can provide real-time visibility. We make sure we suggest optimal locations because sometimes equipment needs to be moved. And this is something that already speeds up the process. So you have, for example, a customer on the line and you need to really quickly react to them by explaining whether something is available, when and where, because the customer can also shift to another company, right? And that's what you need to be quick about in rental space. What we also notice, we said already that margins are under pressure. Rental companies mention revenue leakage a lot. It means that there is some revenue they may be missing, which comes from different factors, like there's forgotten items, or there are maybe pricing that could have been higher based on conditions and demand. And this kind of suggestions is also where AI comes in. It's really helpful and it helps them to increase revenue, in fact. And finally, the last but not the least is skilled labor shortage. And it's not very unique to rental industry, right? A lot of industries struggle with it. And what we see there specifically is how we can make the processes more efficient, how we can speed up those. The example here would be damage detection, right? We have this crane which needs to be quickly inspected or any other piece of equipment. And sometimes it's not being even picked up by a person who understands how it works, but by a driver, right? In case if you have the damage detection available in your mobile app, you can very quickly make photos while the driver is on the way to the next location. All the automatic summaries will be processed in the system, and then of course qualified personnel can follow it up. But at least in this way, we make sure that no time is lost and also nothing is omitted, right? And there still can be evaluation after that. So those kind of small, but not really small things, if you mount it up, helping rental customers to evolve with AI.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing all those scenarios. I mean, it really covers such a broad range of sort of what we know of the potential for AI in enterprise systems right now. And yeah, let me bring it back to you, Michiel. Given everything we've talked about, what opportunities do you see for Microsoft implementation partners?
Well, I think there are a lot of partners out there. I'm not sure if you know how many partners are there, but I think it's in the hundreds globally that are doing ERP implementations for Microsoft Dynamics. And a majority of them focus on, as you call it, vanilla ERP implementations. So basically standard out of the box, not a lot of customizations, and just a pure foundation of standard ERP and implement that. And I think for those, it's a big opportunity because like we discussed, demand on rental is growing. And with Microsoft adding functionality in the core product, they are lowering the entry barrier to start to do things with rental. So that means more rental companies will consider Microsoft rather than they normally would go to another ERP solution. So I think that's definitely an attractive space for partners to be in. And I think it's the same way for Staedean. We embrace it. We welcome what Microsoft is doing here, and we will continue to build on top of that. But again, here is also the nuance. The partners need to learn. They need to work together with other partners or ISVs that understand this space, so we can help them, and we can help them understand the language rental companies speak, the value and the operational depth that they need in order to be successful and do successful implementations. But other than that, I think it's a great opportunity for partners to create more real value in the rental space. And I think that's exactly also where we see that we as Staedean, as an ISV, can definitely help. Of course, we have IP specifically for rental companies, industries that we operate in, but we have also a lot of knowledge. We work with partners globally that do the implementation of rental companies already. We know the processes, we know the value, we know the drill basically. And I think it's exactly where partners can chip in, work with us or with other partners to team up and be successful together. So yeah, I'm getting a little bit excited here when I talk about this because, again, long experience in rental and now seeing it moving away from a niche market into a more strategic cornerstone of an ERP system. I think that's very great to see. And it's a testimonial for the rental market and industry we live in.
Yeah, I can imagine that there must be a real excitement when you build a relationship with a partner, I should say, and they really begin to appreciate the opportunity of being industry focused, using these capabilities to kind of advance their own business.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's partners also need to learn the industry. And I think that's typical to other industries that they may be successful in as well, right? If you are doing in discrete manufacturing implementations, or you're doing implementations in the pharma space for pharmaceutical companies, of course, you always need to take that extra step and learn the industry. But again, I think that is definitely the world that we live in and where Microsoft wants the partner ecosystem to go for.
Michiel, I think, we haven't really covered that, but it's also important to mention that next to partners, right, the Dynamics, Microsoft partners we work closely with, shoulder to shoulder, we also have great partnership with, for example, European and American Rental Association. Just remember in the topic of AI we just covered, so last year we had the whole workshop together with KPMG and European Rental Association about AI. And this is also was a great moment to learn what rental companies are looking for. They could answer questions, we could support them in the process. And that's just one simple example, but given a broader picture of different partnerships we are in to continue learning our industry more and also share this knowledge with everyone who is interested. That's what I wanted to add.
Great. Yeah. And maybe for the future, we can hear some of those perspectives if we get a chance to talk again from some of your partners or your industry allies or your industry partners in the space. So I've learned a lot today. Industry discussions are always really kind of fun for me. They really put things into an interesting perspective and reveal how much I think I used both these words already, but complexity and sophistication go into building a suitable solution that really solves problems. So is there anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap up? Michiel, I can go to you first.
Well, I think the only thing to close off with may be indeed, and I said it already, in order to be successful in the rental space, you need to be close to your customers and you need to understand the complexity. And that is coming back to my experience. And maybe that's a little analogy that I want to tell, right? When I did implementations in the rental space as part of a partner myself, at some point, I felt like I was working more connected to the rental company that I was implementing rather than the partner that I work for, because I was so focused on their day-to-day business, understanding their needs and their problems in order to do a successful implementation. And I think that is what it's all about. And I think that is why specialization and the deep industry expertise matters, especially in the equipment rental space.
Michiel, yes, I understand that we bring all this perspective, and what I want to do, I want to make it tangible. So I'm a more practical person, and I wanted to bring an example of a customer we have is Einskor Ukraine Hire as the leader of the market. Why? It's because it refers back to both the successful partnership we were in while implementing this customer, but even more to the great results they could reach in the first 4 years after implementation, by basically able to triple their gross profit. How did it happen? And of course, we went to them to ask about it, and even other customers of ours sometimes ask about how did it happen? How can we learn from it? We saw that they were really able to improve the margins, right? The key component from two parts. They were able to see the cost component very clearly with all the information organized in one place. So they could choose the right pricing, right? Important piece. They were able to see all the equipment in one place, all the maintenance and everything that's required. Even collaboration between departments improved when all the people in one system and they can see everything moving around. They were able to work on their performance. This is a tremendous result. We obviously cannot fully account it for software we're selling, but it's very important to see how those examples inspire us as a company and even the peers, because every year we have a rental customer day at the office, and it's coming soon. And our customers join us and share their learnings in industry, in software use, in the way they overcome the challenges to each other. And that is a very valuable example of customer collaboration we have. That is I wanted to share to make it more practical.
Oh yeah, that's super interesting. And I'm sure that those kinds of meetings between companies probably yield some really interesting findings. And I'm sure that your team learns a lot from that as well.
Yeah, sure. Also partners are joining, by the way. So that's what example of partner and customer collaboration we're in.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I mean, this is an industry that I would personally love to hear more about from you in the future and maybe from some of your partners as well. So thank you both for being here, for taking the time to talk about it with us.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having us.
This has been another episode of the MSTW podcast. My thanks once again to Anastasia and Michiel for joining me today. And this message from Staedean. If you're a Dynamics partner interested in entering the equipment rental space or a rental company, whether you're evaluating a new ERP or already on D365 Finance and Supply Chain, visit Staedean.com, that's Staedean.com, to learn more about their equipment rental management solution and get in touch. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.